Hello and welcome back to Kaiju Curry House. Sorry we've been away for a while, but the holidays beckon. I'm your host, Joe, and tonight I am joined by Alex and Paul, and we're going to go into negative digits and talk about minus one. So strap in and get ready. Before we go on any further, we've got everybody's favorite pun. So without further ado, Paul, what have Kaiju been up to?
What have I been up to, Joe? Well, it's been the holidays, hasn't it? So you think I'd be catching up on loads of monster movies and the like, but do you know what? I don't really do that at Christmas. Elf isn't really a Christmas film. Sorry, a kaiju film. It's the definitive Christmas film.
It has a Ray Harryhausen cameo in it, though.
I watched Krampus, but I watch that every year. What I did do is I read Island 731.
Oh, you did you?
I did, yep. So I took the downtime to do some reading.
That is a messed up book.
I'm confused how that's part of the Nemesis saga.
Oh, don't worry. It works its way in. Large spiders. Yeah.
Okay, so do they appear in another? Because I've only read Nemesis, Project Nemesis, and now Island 731.
Yeah, so basically one of the spiders pokes Nemesis.
Oh, okay.
And the progeny of that poke is a hybrid.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, because I saw it. Because at the end, spoilers. Something gets off the island. Right. Okay. So
that's the way it goes. Something gets off.
Yeah, something always survives.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really cool book. I was just expecting like a Nemesis or something to happen to do with that, but obviously it didn't. But still, absolutely great read, and I think that's probably the most kaiju thing that I got up to over the break. So, Alex, what have kaiju been up to?
Thanks for asking, Paul. It's funny because I kind of set out thinking that I was going to be watching a couple of kaiju movies, but I suppose much like yourself, asking the question, is Elf a kaiju movie? No, it's not. Is it a Christmas movie? I don't know, Paul, you tell me. But I mean,
it's the Christmas movie.
Probably like everyone in, the globe, around the globe right now, I sought out, my one mission was to watch Godzilla Minus One. But actually following on from that, my big kind of challenge, I went out to try and find a quad-sized movie poster of Godzilla Minus One because I love the film that much. I thought, you know what I want? Just above the fireplace, pushing aside the family photographs, I thought I would really like Godzilla Minus One.
So you're basically replacing the Legend of the Dinosaurs and Monster Birds poster
exactly
over the mantle.
I am, yeah. I'm dethroning your beloved poster that you got me. Thank you. But no, I asked around every man cinema, no, and all the cinemas that I asked, they all said no. However, Cineworld yesterday, they said we have one, and another person has just stepped in earlier today and got it. Oh. So I want to know, who is this person, and do they listen to our podcast? Joe, what have Kaiju been up to?
So normally I can't say that I get up to too much, but when you leave Joe alone, he does loads. So I went out and saw Godzilla Minus One. I actually took my partner on a date, and that's what we saw. Both loved it. I celebrated the holidays, and I got a Godzilla-related gift. I got Godzilla Singular Point on DVD, and it is a legitimate copy, and I am quite chuffed to have it, honestly, because physical media is a thing. And if we ever got rid of Netflix, I have to admit that Singular Point would be one of the things that'd be like, oh, darn. So we kind of binge watched that. I was quite surprised that our 10, 11-year-old were quite enamored with it. So that was interesting. I have been making a Singular Point Godzilla. He's between 33 and 35 centimeters tall. So he's quite big. I'd say he's around the size of an X Plus Gigantic Series figure. And I 3D printed that. And then I've actually just found the plane. So I'm going to 3D print the plane because I feel like you have to have those two going together. So I've gotten to a point with him. What I think I'm going to do, though, is modify the dorsal plates a little bit more so that they're a little bit more gnarly. So Blender's a great program for that. So I'm going to try my hand at that. What else? I feel like I'm only scratching the surface because I've really accomplished quite a lot of kaiju stuff. But I think I'll leave it at there for now because arguably the coolest Godzilla movie to date is coming out. Oh, sorry. Just thought about it when I ended the thought. I have watched Monarch Legacy of Monsters. We are currently up to episode 8, I think, at the time of this recording. Okay. So yeah, that's been a fun ride too. But let's get into it, shall we?
Absolutely. And don't forget, we did ask for our listeners to comment, and they've sent in some of their reviews. So we'll go through them. I don't know how you want to do it. Do you want to take it in turns and split between us and the listeners?
I think that sounds great. The more kind of public engagement, the better with our community. That'd be great.
I feel like we should first give everybody opportunity here. This is going to have spoilers. If you haven't
wondered, yeah.
If you have not seen Minus One, you're doing yourself a disservice by listening to any more of this podcast episode. It is much more fun if you go in not having a clue. I deliberately went in blind. Paul, I think
I did the same.
Did you go in blind? So we all went in blind. And the thing is, we've seen a few Godzilla films, and we went in blind, not knowing what to expect. And it really exceeded expectations because of that. So you will miss out on a lot of the drama and a lot of the monster action if you listen any further. So there's your warning. Let's go ahead.
Well, how are we going to structure this? Should we talk about kind of first impressions? I
think impressions would probably be the route to go, because then we can talk about plot.
Okay. Well, Joe, can we start with you? Because I've not spoken to you in a couple of weeks, and I've kind of, other than the occasional message, and the impression that I got from you was that it was overwhelmingly positive. So I'd love to kind of start with yours.
Right. So I feel like one of the things that we have to address before you say anything about impressions, it's not necessarily plot related, but when we talk about quality and impressions. So this film was done on a budget of less than $15 million. So someone threw that number out there, and then via the magic of the internet, the director said, 15 million. Gee, I wish we had 15 million. So to put that in context, this was a low budget film by today's standards, a relatively decent budget, even if it's a little bit around that mark for a Godzilla film coming from Japan. But this is the first film where there was enough character development and tone that Godzilla wasn't the primary reason for my enjoyment of the film. So that's really hard. I think Godzilla films, by far and large, have struggled with the human element, and this film had it in spades. So I went in expecting to watch a Godzilla film, and Godzilla is a plot device in the larger span of this film. And from that standpoint, I absolutely loved it. I felt like there were really harrowing scenes. There was clear risk and loss in this film. I think that was a really great element of it. And Godzilla, the scenes that it was in were absolutely fantastic. I'd say the two scenes that really got me the most were, firstly, Odo Island, because that was very menacing. It's kind of like the first time you're watching Jurassic Park and the T-Rex rips down the fence. It's like that level of awe, investment, and tone. And then the second would be the Minesweeper chase, to give it a coin a term for it. And that was just interesting because a lot of people are comparing it to Jaws, and I think that's a fantastic way of how to put it, because you've got a boat similar to the Orca, and you've got a few guys on it, and they understand what they're up against, but the gravity of what they're up against, only one of them has a clue, similarly to Captain Quint. So I think that that was good. And the way it starts off, they're just kind of sitting there, and then they just go over, they like look over to the other boat, and then Godzilla erupts from the ocean and takes it out, and then the chase is off. I think that that was really great. I mean, I mean, there is hardly a scene in the film that I didn't connect with, but I think that for most moviegoers, those are pivotal scenes. And then in the end, how he is defeated. To reveal a little bit about my life, I actually work in aeration, waste treatment, and the physics of what they did and how they did it is very close to what I do for a living. And I use those principles day in and day out. And it was really interesting to see that. And it is scientifically and physically accurate. So I was tickled to death to see that and have that personal link with it. But I really enjoyed the film. Like I said earlier, my partner Dawn came with me, and she and I were both very vested emotionally with the characters. So yeah, I mean, like my impression of the film is it is the best Godzilla film. It is the best one. And the original 1954, I think this dethrones it because it covers all of the same material and then goes several paces farther and fleshes that out and really focuses on it in a time period where it's not just getting dubbed over. It's not just getting watered down or glossed over. It is like explicitly, like thrown to the forefront of the plot of the movie. And Godzilla, this is the most threatening Godzilla I think we've ever seen. So on a number of fronts, this is now the Godzilla film. But yeah, that's Joe's thoughts. What did you guys think?
You go, Alex, or shall I?
Paul, I'm conscious that you weren't as enamored with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to kind of like save your thoughts.
Oh, it had CGI. It was everything you were looking for. Come on.
Go on,
Yeah.
Paul.
So okay.
Please.
No, I'm not hating on the film, but to me it was overhyped because everyone, like yourself, Joe, you're saying best Godzilla film ever. It's it's Oscar nominated or Oscar winning now.
It is
highest grossing Japanese film in the UK cinema. Made nearly 8 or 9.
It's the highest ever. It's the highest ever Toho film for grossing, isn't it? Yeah,
it's done amazingly well, and everyone has just been singing its praises. So I went in not knowing anything apart from what I've seen in the trailer, but with the highest expectations. And what I got was a really great, solid film, but I didn't think it was as amazing as everyone else. I loved Godzilla, loved how menacing he is. This is a bad guy Godzilla here. This is Mother Nature taking revenge. It's brilliant. It's what made me not laugh, but I was thinking it's strange now seeing the Godzilla X Kong, where we've got Godzilla and Kong running side by side, and Kong's got this metal arm thing, and then over in Japan we've got the menacing Godzilla that 2014 was meant to be, and it's like, oh, Hollywood has now gone like the goofy route, whereas Japan's gone for the more serious. And I just thought it's interesting how that switched. As you said, Joe, Odo Island, absolutely the legend Godzilla, the locals fear, and it's just not little, but it's not the massive Godzilla we're used to seeing.
Proper cryptid.
So that was a really interesting scene.
It's really cool.
It was really, really cool to see him like that. And then obviously the big Godzilla when he's like his atomic breath. I mean, that build up, all the spines popping up, and just the force of that attack. And we grew up watching it, and he would just use that breath willy nilly, just attacking. And now it's like, wow, that is raw power right there. And the story, it was like, I didn't know what to expect, but it was so heavy. And there's this kamikaze pilot who couldn't go through with it, and then his parents are dead, and his neighbors' children have died. And my God, it was a very, very dark story. But then obviously there's redemption and stuff. But it was just like, this is a really, really serious film, and I'm so used to the legendary ones, which are so much more lighter, that it's not. I guess a lot of people might go in expecting something more like the legendary tone and might be a bit more surprised. Speaking of which, from my experience when I went to see it at the cinema, it's the busiest I've seen the cinema in a long time. And I went to see, I think, the second or third showing of the day. The youngest viewer must have been about 8 years old. There was two parents and their children there. There was a group of 4 or 5 teenagers. There was lots of couples there. So, there was, from like 8 to 50, there was just a range of all ages and all genders, and they all like enjoyed it. Everyone seemed really positive. They're talking about it, walking out. So it's a really great experience. It's a really great film, but it's not the best Godzilla film for me. There you go. Alex, what were your thoughts?
Okay, so I would like to preface this with the fact that it's very rare that I don't read up on a film now before seeing it. I feel like I and many other people now live in an IMDb world where it's so easy just to kind of glance over the plot synopsis and have a bit of a read. And like, I do it both as the potential viewer, but also as a parent, because if I'm thinking about a film, is this going to be age appropriate? I do a quick kind of content check and, see, look at violence, anything mature, that kind of stuff. But this was a film that I intentionally withdrew from social media to avoid spoilers. And that's very uncharacteristic of me, because I'm quite kind of flippant about spoilers. But I really wanted to kind of savor this. And then when it came out in cinemas, I thought, right, okay, I had this idea of what was going to happen. And for me, it was going to be a date with my other half. That was kind of the plan. And then I thought about it and was like, well, all of my children know that I love Godzilla and it's kind of my thing. And wouldn't it be nice to go and see it with the family? Glad that I didn't. And then
we were going into Dangerland right there.
Yeah. Glad that I did not. And then the opportunity came up for it to be a childcare evening sorted, where it could be a date with my partner and go out, and that was wonderful. So kind of I went out on the last night of it being screened. I think it's being extended in some cinemas, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the last night screening. And actually the cinema was tiny. It was not a big screen. I saw it at the Odeon in Gateshead at the Metro Centre, and there was 11 people, including myself. So very, very small, of which 2 people walked out. I don't know why. So it's very, very small and intimate. But as soon as it began, I knew the tone. I felt like it set out its stall very, very well, having kind of the failed kamikaze pilot who had dishonored himself. And as the film progressed, and I will talk about it more as the evening goes on with the 2 of you, what really struck me about Minus One was, unlike any film to date from Toho, I actually did not care that much about Godzilla, which I've never had that experience before. Yes, there was the spectacle of the dorsal fins popping out as it kind of almost erupted with the blue for the atomic breath. That was fantastic. And the attack sequences on Odo Island, and then in the water with the shot that I've got behind me, which I very much agree with you, Joe. I got Jaws vibes, the kind of the feeling of the great white overpowering a small fishing boat. I definitely felt those nods. But for me, the film was not about Godzilla, and that's what I thought was so special about it, because in the truest sense of it, as we're so often saying, Godzilla is kind of the narrative device for what's going on around it at the time. So, if you take Shin Godzilla, it's a narrative device for the carnage of bureaucracy slowing down a response to Fukushima, and Godzilla versus Hedorah being a very unsubtle commentary on pollution and waste, and Godzilla versus Megalon is a commentary on absolutely nothing. I don't think there even is a commentary there, but for me, it's very clear that this was a film that was navigating some incredibly complex themes that I've kind of reflected on. I feel that the single most striking scene for me was the moment when one of the civilians who was ex-military, he spoke about how the Japanese government during the Second World War had intentionally not put ejector seats in in planes, and they'd prevented escape. And I thought that for me, it was a very, very brave film. It explored themes around, the complexity of, of suicide in war, which is, a complex barrel of fish that I'm not necessarily going to open up, but it bravely went into that. I think that what's interesting, as you said earlier, Joe, about how it dethrones the 1954 Gojira. Obviously, that was filmed just 8 to 9 years after the Second World War. And it's fascinating to see kind of how far along Japan has come and the way it reflects upon the Second World War, and using Godzilla for that. Yeah, I mean, I'm possibly waffling too much. I thought it was a fabulous film, and I thought it was fabulous for so many reasons, because I love the big Godzilla. I love everything about it. But it was not a film about a monster for me. It was like a film about Japan's history, about the Second World War, about kamikaze culture, about honor, about family. The idea that you have this wonderful character of Koichi, unintentionally becoming a father figure, but is he a father? He doesn't want to be. And then the real strength in the film for me was the acting of Koichi's character, played with Noriko. I thought the single strongest character of the film was Noriko. It was his spouse, and I was so pleased at the end of the film for the result. If anyone's coming in a bit late into the episode, for heaven's sake, please stop listening right now. Spoilers. But yeah, it was so satisfying to have that conclusion where Noriko says, do you have closure? And I thought that was such a powerful moment to end the film on. And Joe, you said in a message to me that, and I think you posted on Facebook, that it made you feel emotions that you've never felt with a Godzilla film.
Oh, yeah, it totally did. But I have to cut you off during your waffle here. Akiko was the character that I was the most invested in. I was like, oh my God, if anything happens to that little girl, I'm gonna, fisticuffs are gonna come out. Like, I will, who no. So yeah, like whenever that little, as a girl dad, whenever that little girl was on the screen, I was instantly invested. I think as a parent, it certainly tugs at that heartstring, which no other Godzilla film has, really. And yeah, there were just so many different avenues that the film went down, and it did them all so well. One of the things that Dawn called out, and again, like, she was very quick to point out, is like, wow, they were really like taking no prisoners there when they were discussing like how bad the military strategy was, or like how they treated their soldiers. And for her, like, the big thing that she noticed in the film, and the plot point that she really enjoyed, was the fighter plane, the prototype fighter plane that he actually flies at the end of the film, that everybody presumes he's going to use as a kamikaze plane. But Don, being so multilingual, immediately clocked the German warning and label on the back of his seat, because they had stated earlier, in the film, that the Japanese planes have no ejector seats. Dawn clocked quite quickly in the film, clever as she is, it's a German plane. So she's like nudging me, it's gonna have an ejector seat, Joe. It's gonna have an ejector seat. Just like, shh. But like, there are so many great points there, and I don't think that necessarily, like, I'm sure that honor is another way you can look at this film, but for me, what the film had, like what it offers, or the way that I view it, is you have a character who's coming to grips with what is important in his life. So there are things that society, that his nation, that his role demand of him. And it's his internal struggle with what he deems as important and the guilt of living up to expectations of that. And I think in today's world, a lot of us feel that we're quite pressured in how we need to perform. So just to throw something out there, like the nuclear family, that, and sorry for that pun, that was not intended, but like the nuclear family and owning a house, like all those sorts of things for millennials, which the three of us are, and so many others, that's out the window. Like you can't afford it, you can't do it. There's like a guilt or a missing of that. And for our main character, like he comes back and he has no home. He has nothing. His role is gone. What is he supposed to do? Can he have a family? Should he feel guilty about having these things? Like, again, it's okay, to like make a decision and do things. Like when we talk about not fulfilling his role in this film, and we're going to go into plot in a bit here, like the way that it was illustrated in the film was absolutely brilliant. So he's a great pilot. His parents wanted him to come home. The end of the war is a foregone conclusion, and everybody apparently knows it. So what he does is he takes his plane and lands on Odo Island, saying, oh, I think there's something wrong with it. It wouldn't have gotten to the end destination for him to do his thing. Plane's fine. The mechanics know it. But while he's sitting there looking at the sunset after, something's been insinuated, like, you coward, one of the mechanics comes up and says, you know what? We need more people like you. Why would you throw your life away? It's going to do no good. No good. End of the war is weeks away. So it's one of those things where it's just like he wants something better, but he has to give up what's expected of him in order to fulfill that. He needs to have his own motivation. I mean, there were so many deeper meanings to everything that went on with that character arc. And what you mentioned earlier, Paul, like some folks like a linear plot, like the legendary films. But in the legendary films, I think that you'd be hard pressed to find a full character arc like the one that we see in Godzilla Minus One. And it's not just necessarily for one character. You see it in smaller degrees for pretty much all the characters that you witness on screen, or at least the ones that you follow. So, yeah. Sorry if I'm waffling, but it's a great film.
No, I don't think you are waffling, and I think that what you're saying resonates. Just you mentioned earlier about the legendary films. What I don't want to do here is, like, certainly on my part, I don't want to slip into being overly negative about the legendary films. But what I would cautiously like to say was that it was interesting how in the trailer section of the screening for Godzilla Minus One, I got in with plenty of time. I sat down, and one of the trailers was Godzilla X Kong.
Yeah.
And my other half's kind of nudging me, being like, oh, and why aren't you excited? And I kind of shrugged. And it's not that I'm pretentious about it. It's not that I'm kind of like, I don't need to see it. It's an American film. It's not like that. I think it's just that the avenue that Legendary have taken from Godzilla King of the Monsters through, is it Godzilla versus Kong? I can't remember. Is it King Kong
versus Kong? It's
Godzilla versus Kong.
It's best, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then Godzilla X Kong. I totally acknowledge the avenue that they're going for, and clearly fun works because Godzilla vs. Kong was the movie that a lot of us needed during lockdown. I know that it came out when COVID was pretty rotten, and everyone said, you know what, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. And everyone said it was great fun. And I watched it, and it was just fun. But it was very surface level. And I know that kind of the memes have been circulating about Godzilla X Kong, the fact that Godzilla goes a bright pink, and people have been like, it's ridiculous. And it's like, no, it's fun. and that's okay. That's why I like Godzilla versus Megalon, Godzilla versus Gigan, because they're fun movies, and that's okay. It's all right for something to be a bit stupid. That's totally fine. But it's a very, very different entity to what we have received with the likes of Gojira in 1954. I know that you're a particular fan, Joe, of The Return of Godzilla from the 80s. Like, that's a more serious tone. And similarly for me, kind of my special favorite is Shin Godzilla in 2016. But yeah, I think just that you said earlier, Joe, about like you struggle to find a more complete character arc story. Was it character arc or story arc, did you say?
Character arc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of the journey that Koichi goes on from start to finish, from kind of, basically that flight or fight response kicks in. He totally freezes, in fact, cannot fire the gun, fails as a kamikaze pilot, and then does not protect his fellow comrades, and then returns home disgraced to go all the way through there and become a father to that little girl who you were concerned about, Joe, and becomes, and rightly so concerned, and becomes a spouse to Noriko. I think that's an incredible arc. And I love the idea that the response to Godzilla comes from civilian, and they're very explicit in that they say this will be a civilian response. I love that. I thought it was wonderful. Yeah. Paul, any thoughts? I feel like we've kind of like pushed you aside.
No, that's fine. You gush all you like. No, I did enjoy it.
What did you love?
What did I love?
Please tell me.
I loved Godzilla. I love this version of Godzilla. Absolutely awesome. I would agree that I think this is the most involved I felt with any character in a Godzilla film. When the little girl says "Daddy," and he's like, "No, I'm not your dad." That was heartbreaking.
Oh yeah, every character picked up on him for that too. Like all of his mates were just like
what?
What
you
did
can't
you just
say that to a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so it's not that I didn't enjoy it at all. It's just Shin Godzilla still ranks highest for me. But there's that. What I didn't like, just to quickly say, it's not that she survived. It's how on earth did she survive that blast? She got blown who knows where. It just felt a bit, it's nice, but I was like, really? That just seemed a little bit off.
So to throw that out there, so my background as a working professional is in vacuum and pressure and in aeration. So when that nuclear blast goes off, what you have is the shockwave. It's not the explosion itself, but the shockwave and the air being pushed back. So yes, it did hit her, but if you look back, there isn't really that much for her to run into. There's no wall directly behind her. So in terms of concussive force, there isn't anything. Now, what people don't always see and what isn't always shown is the vacuum.
Yeah, that was really cool.
So the vacuum, again, like there are elements to this film which scientifically, like I have to applaud. This is, for a Godzilla film, this is incredibly accurate. So the suction, so there is an explosion, it's going to grab all of the air. It is displaced air, and then it is going to suck in air to that massive explosion is feeding itself. So when it showed that and everything going forward, that was, again, but with regards to what is there for her to run into, like everything behind her, fell over, everything in front of her got sucked in. So, like she's just kind of being tossed in this void as I see it. Obviously, she came out with a few bumps and grazes. She's lying in a hospital bed completely, like wrapped up by the end of the film. But I mean, you don't immediately know that she lives. And I'm sure a lot of people, like in that scene definitely died. But you have to understand, like, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you had similar, like survivals in those instances. And so it's harrowing, but it's not impossible. So I feel like that. Now the person like what I am more concerned about is the guy who like was hiding in an alleyway from a building that probably should have fallen down on top of him. How did he survive? But like that's more plot armor for me than hers. But yeah, like there's a lot going.
Sorry, Joe, if you want to be finicky in terms of kind of her survival, I'd say that, if we're being really awkward, she was more likely to have died when she was hanging from the bus, train, bus, the vehicle, because she hung on for quite a while. Like that was when, for me, she was going to go. But what I will say from a different perspective, speaking on behalf of my other half, we were watching it together, and she became very invested in Noriko's character. And something that she has kind of commented and criticized some of the Godzilla movies that she's seen, and it's a perspective that I'd not considered. When we watched, I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. When we watched Godzilla King of the Monsters, there's a scene when Paddington's mum, you know who I mean, yeah, you're looking at me funny, Paul. Sorry, Joe. It's Paddington.
Brown wasn't in that movie.
Yeah, no, we know that Godzilla King of the Monsters is part of the Paddington cinematic universe. We've been through this before. No, but Paddington's mum, one of the scientists who's briefly in the 2014 Godzilla, and then she's again in Godzilla King of the Monsters, she gets squashed, and they're all running away from King Ghidorah, and just within seconds, she just gets stepped on. And for me, it's just a little bit of nonsense action. And my spouse said to me that it felt a little bit kind of jarring that the female characters are just so kind of easily killed off and dispensable, and that was bothersome for her. And I stored that and thought, that's a fair point. And then we went to see Godzilla Minus One, and she becomes very invested in Noriko, and then she's blasted away, and I'm like, oh crap. And then she kind of looks at me with this sort of this glaze of disdain of, there it is again, Alex. Once again, Toho's killing off women. And I'm like, just no. I'm like, but no, I saw her blasted away. So at the end, when you see her bandaged up but alive, I was like, whew.
Dodged a bullet there.
Exactly. But coming back to that, we both found ourselves thinking, we shared the view that she was our favorite character, that, she is the one who, when Koichi is totally breaking down and like not coping, because I think the way that Minus One handles his PTSD was very powerful. He clearly has that shocking survivor's guilt, and he's not a well man for much of the film. And he's deeply traumatized. That part when he's sat up in the middle of the night and he's kind of not sure where he is, and is it just kind of an ongoing nightmare? Is he in hell? I found that very, very powerful and distressing. And the fact that Noriko is carrying him along and giving him the reason to go, and it's still kind of implied that they're not formally together as kind of lovers, and yet she's still kind of spurring him on to keep going. I thought that was wonderful that she does endure, despite kind of my questions of, well, how did she
Noriko is a very strong character. Like she has it all, honestly. She 10 for 10. That man, like he bagged a 10. He didn't even know
he did. Like, he was punching. Yeah, absolutely. Purely kind of on a support level. Like that guy did well for himself.
Let's hear from what our listeners have said. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Sorry. Yeah, we should have done that earlier.
Yeah. So Frankie B. Washington.
Frankie.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the Godzilla Minus One, since it was heavily influenced by the original film. It successfully reimagined what came before, but skillfully expanded on the human stories that are part of the overall tale, utilizing the visual technologies of today to embellish upon practical filming is the greatest homage to this legacy. The score was stunning and complemented Akira's work masterfully. The film was truly done by a team that understood and respected the journey of the Godzilla brand, and in doing so, they've established a new marker point for the future fandom to look back upon.
All I will say is, why is Frankie not here right now?
Yes.
You could have just kicked me out and got Frankie instead. That would have been far better.
God, I was thinking, but is this a reboot of the? Are we now going to see a sequel to Minus One? Because it ended in such a way that we would.
It's still Reiwa, isn't it?
It's still Reiwa. So
yeah, it's still Reiwa.
So there have been a couple discussions about this, and there have been official comms back. So the director said that he would be open to doing a sequel. He left it open. However, the official corporate communications is that we're taking a seat back. It will be a while before you see another Godzilla movie from us. We are focusing on quality content. And at the moment, I think what Toho's main use for Godzilla is they're kind of doing Marvel's done it with What If. So if you're a Disney Plus subscriber, you might be familiar with What If in the Marvel Universe, where basically they take established characters and they go, what if, and they change something about the character and they're radically different, or the story goes in a way that you aren't expecting, which makes it new and fun and original for both veterans and people who are just coming into it. So if we look back and see what Toho has done with their Godzilla, we've had Shin Godzilla, we've had the Netflix Godzilla Earth, we've had Netflix Singular Point, we now have Godzilla Minus One, and all of these are magnificent Elseworld one-shots so far, and each one you could leave open for a sequel, and some of them hint strongly at sequels, but that doesn't seem to be the route that's being taken. I mean, people could go back and do that, but I mean, even the director was talking about a sequel to Minus One where he would call it the Curse of Godzilla, and it would be the same characters 10 years on, and perhaps setting up other Toho monsters to come in. For me personally, I don't want to see that. I think that this was such a grand standalone film, and it had so many important things to say. It would cheapen it, to use a word or to use a phrase, and I don't want to see that happen. But I think what Toho's looking to do is we have Monarch Legacy of Monsters, we have Godzilla X Kong, we have those, in the forefront now, and we've had so much Godzilla content just in the last 30 days. I think what they're conscious of, and probably wisely so, is not creating a kaiju fatigue.
Yeah.
Because it's all over the headlines right now about superhero fatigue and how superhero films, because the pipeline is so congested with them, with cinemas, that people aren't rushing out to see them in droves because there's just too much to see. And if 4 superhero films come out in a 2-month span, you're looking at, potentially 80 quid if you look in the UK to go and see these films by the time you've paid up for parking or gotten yourself your Coke or, what have you. Coke does not, sponsor this podcast, by the way. You can, though, if you want. Anyways, but just it's that kind of thing. And I think that we kind of grazed the surface of that this month because we had the short films, we had Minus One, we had Monarch Legacy of Monsters, we have all the Godzilla X Kong reveals and trailers coming out. So there's that. And then, it was mentioned earlier, 2 people walked out of a showing at Godzilla Minus One. Were they expecting Godzilla X Kong? This is the risk that you run.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, and
I think that there's always the risk when you go and see a foreign film that you don't know much about, that you sit down, excuse me, and you're not sure what it is. There might have been people that kind of went in and sat down and kind of went, this is even better than I expected. But I think those 2 people kind of, what's this drivel? Just thinking in terms of kind of, would there be a sequel? It's not generally for a long time been Toho style, because we haven't, since the Heisei era with 1989 through 1995, we've generally not had sequel movies, because all of the Millennium era movies, they were standalone wacky films in their own right. So,
and Kira, we had Kira.
Which one's that?
There wasn't there?
Tokyo SOS and Godzilla X Mechagodzilla. Those 2 were
I do apologize. No, you're right. Yeah, those were each other. No. Yeah.
But it's not, as you say, it's not it's not Marvel. They're not producing 4 or 5 films a year that all follow on. You need to see the last one to see that end credit scene, to see how it goes on.
What have other people said?
Let's go. One of our favourites, Brandon Hickley Smith.
Yeehaw.
Like Brandon.
So, in recent weeks, I've heard that American critics praise its visual effects, direction, story, characters, musical score, and social commentary on the new Godzilla film. That's no surprise to me, as Minus One is the best Reiwa installment I've seen since 2016's Resurgence. Almost everything within the film is top-notch, right up to the Big G himself. I love how they gave him similarities to the Heisei designs, especially with the head. At the same time, though, Godzilla's feet and dorsal plates are abnormally large, but I'm not too bothered about that, since the era has given us some pretty unusual designs. There were some awesome scenes that were nicely played homage to the original in 1954. For example, when Godzilla takes a bite out of the train. Not only that, but even a Jaws moment where he chases after a boat in the middle of the ocean. I have to say that was probably my favourite sequence, and it was both entertaining and pretty intense. Even down to the human plot, along with the acting and character development, were some of the highlights of the film. Last but certainly not least, the soundtrack was wonderfully composed, just like Akira would do it. Only thing I would wish is have Godzilla more around 300 feet, since he was quite small. But even that is not enough to downgrade my final rating. Proud to say, for the first time in a while, I now have another top favourite Godzilla film on my list. 5 out of 5. Killer. How big was he in this film? I'm trying to think size-wise.
As big as the original.
He was quite tall.
Because in the original, he's not. In the 1954, he's small because the buildings are, I think, quite small, aren't they?
He's not absolutely massive. He's nowhere near legendary. He's nowhere near Shin.
Nope.
They brought him back down.
Brought him back down to the smaller size.
Yeah, so
he still seemed pretty big.
Godzilla's big.
He was. He just wasn't massive. He was
not massive.
Paul, I'm just conscious of time. What has our previous co-host Connor said?
Oh yeah, so Connor did write in, but then he also, because I did say write in or do a video, Connor has sent us a video, so we'll let that play now.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Surprise! Yep, it's me. I'm back just for you this Christmas. Hey, Kaiju fans. Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? Yes. You might be wondering, Connor, where have you been? What have you been doing? You know, why now of all times to come back? But the real question is, Connor, what have Kaiju been up to? Well, folks, as it being the Christmas spirit, you know, it's also the time of giving and such. So I got myself a lot of stuff for myself, you know, because, you know, like the Grinch shows, people can be very, very selfish. So, so what have I been doing? Well, I've been into my Bandai's as of late. So as you can see here, I got one here. This is the new 1955 Godzilla. Debatable whether or not it's the same one from the memorial box. We have the new Anguirus 1955, yeah, which is debatable if it's scanned from an X Plus or not, but still it's a pretty good figure. This is actually from last year as well. I also got this one. This is the Godzilla Store exclusive damaged color Mechagodzilla. Though I think maybe the most appropriate thing is that it is the movie color version. At least that's what I call it. It's like a mini X Plus because it's even got like traces on it. And also, I managed to get myself this figure here. This is the Raimundo Kong because this is made by, of course, YMSF, which, as people in the Kaiju community would know, YMSF do little limited run figures of various Kaiju that nobody expects. And it just so happens that they're selling the last of their stock. So basically, probably by the time this video is out, they probably don't have any more Kongs. So I guess, I mean, you can message them, but no promises that you get one. But yeah, other than spending my money on very expensive vinyl figures, I also saw Minus One, I suppose. Yep, we're getting to the meat and potatoes already of the this little mini short review, I suppose. So how was my experience seeing Minus One? Well, for starters, £7 for a bottle of Pepsi and a pack of M&Ms. Come on, Cineworld, come on. Secondly, I saw the film in 4DX, which was great because, you know, you got the chairs rocking and all that and water getting splashed in your face and such, you know. It gets really immersed. So you just get a sore arse at the end of it, but hey, it's what it is. And thirdly, it was a really good film, and I do recommend everyone go see it. But before we get into that, what are my thoughts on it? Besides what I'm saying, it's a good film. I would say that, for me at least, this is the first Godzilla film that has felt like it's designed for everyone, right? It honestly, because it's not really a Godzilla film, is it? No, it is a human drama, right? And I hear the thing on the internet a lot of times saying that the human characters in Godzilla movies suck, which is not true. You know, if you watch some of the older Godzilla films, you will like a lot of the characters. A lot of them are memorable, like some being worse than others. But this is the first Godzilla movie where basically you fall in love with the characters. You know, it being post-war Japan. Your main boy Koichi is an ex-kamikaze pilot who's trying to rebuild his life. Gets traumatized by Godzilla and all sorts. You know, you've got like I say, you got Koichi, you've got Noriko, you got the little girl. You know, even the sub characters in it, you care for the sub characters, which is amazing. Excuse me, professional. You know, especially the. I suppose it's a bit of a spoiler. I suppose if you haven't seen Minus One, the minesweeping crew on the boat that Koichi joins in the film, you know, like, or as I call the lads, because god damn it, they got our boys back. But yeah, no, honestly, like, throughout the film, you want the humans to succeed, you want them to make out alive and all that. And without spoiling anything, it's like, yeah, it's, I don't know, I don't think there's ever been humans like this in the Godzilla film, even in the original film, which tries to take things seriously. In fact, in terms of like the tone of the film, you know, I would compare it to, I would say it's technically a remake of 54, but I think I would say it's very similar to The Thing, right? Because as we know, The Thing is a remake of The Thing from Another World. And I would say that, yeah, I would say Minus One is comparable to that because it may be better than the original film. Debatable, of course, but yeah. I also like the characterization of Godzilla because, you know, we've had Godzilla just destroy buildings, use his atomic breath and all that. This is the first Godzilla I feel where he actually does feel like a threat, and you, as the audience member, at least for me at least, you want him to lose. You know, it's not a case of like, oh, this is cool, he shoots the atomic breath and all that. No. And this one, you know, you hate Godzilla. You want Godzilla to fail, pretty much. And considering what he does, because he picks people out. This is a very vicious Godzilla, by the way. Like, he singles people out and he like basically tries to eat them, pretty much. Well, I wouldn't say eat them, but spoiler. But no, I would say this is a very deliberate Godzilla in terms of like how he attacks things. And I do like the special effects in it. I do think, you know, considering its alleged budget of 50 million, allegedly it's less. Who knows? You know, who knows? You can't trust the internet these days. Like, I think that compared to like the trailer for the recent MonsterVerse movie, you know, for Godzilla vs. Kong, you know, that film looks more like a cartoon than how Godzilla is portrayed in this film with CGI. And there's even some spots, some really good shots, especially in the boat scene, or when he's chasing the minesweeping boat, that generally look really good, you know. And the joys of technical wizardry, I guess, at its finest. Because it's like there was a close-up shot where you see Godzilla's mouth in it, and you see like a landmine in it, and yeah, honestly, it's probably one of the most convincing CGI shots that I've seen in a while. You know, like the lighting is so well done in it. You know, and as far as I'm aware, when the director was on set, he actually had the maquette of the Minus One Godzilla in the back there on set for lighting reference. So, you know, I guess, you know, like the animators had good references. But yeah, Godzilla is definitely a villain in this, and I think this is the most evil Godzilla has been in a while. probably second to, well, I wouldn't say second. I think he's more evil than the GMK Godzilla, for instance. Who again, deliberately attacks people. But yeah, yeah. Overall, especially right. Let me tell you something. I was making a joke earlier about 4DX, but I think the 4DX experience really did enhance the viewing of this film as well. Especially when Godzilla roared in the cinema, you felt it. You felt it. You felt every blast, especially the atomic breath scene. Once you see that scene, oh man, just imagine just everything just shaking all at once and like that. Yeah. Overall, it's potentially the greatest Godzilla film ever made in terms of a filmmaking standpoint. Is it my favorite Godzilla film now, though? I think I'll need to see it again. But other than that, if you do decide to go see it, well, probably not if you live in the UK, because as of the time of recording, this is the last day that's in cinemas. So good luck. Unless they extend the runtime, which I don't think they will. It's a once in a lifetime experience, and I'm forever grateful going to it. I missed going to see Shin Godzilla in cinemas. I missed Shin Ultraman. I was not going to miss out on this. So overall, I think my rating is I'll give it a solid 9 out of 10. I think in terms of the film's quality, and I can't wait to get the physical release whenever that may be. I might even just import the Japanese 4K at least, because that's a guarantee at least. But then again, considering that how well Godzilla Minus One has been doing at the box office as well, who knows? Maybe Criterion might give it the 4K treatment. You never know. Yeah. Final thoughts, if nothing else, right? If nothing else, I guess try and build a time machine if you want to see it in cinemas, I guess. But yeah, that was my quick little ramble, I guess, on Godzilla Minus One, I suppose. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved the experience. I loved the characters. I loved Godzilla's design, and yeah, I am looking forward to seeing it again whenever that may be. And yeah, as always, keep it kaiju. Woo!
Any other?
Yeah, so we've also got Dave Lant. Actually, Dave Lant said it was incredible. We'll fill your review later. Oh, and there it is. Hang on. So, simply put, if you want to watch a Godzilla movie, this is it. It is essential. Setting it at the end of World War II feels right and does away from Godzilla needing to repel futuristic weapons. It's literally man versus monster. The story is excellent and felt grounded, with a human struggle to deal with the fallout of war and a failure of duty. It's so good in places that you can forget it's a Godzilla movie, and that massively increases his impact when he is seen on screen. Time-wise, I felt the mix of Godzilla/humans felt right, and let the human side of the story be directed by what Godzilla was doing. The ending is fantastic, although I'd like to have seen the final fight take a little longer. Following the final scenes, I'll be interested to see a sequel. There's definitely a story to follow. I hope they don't leave us hanging like they did with Shin.
So, to build on that, forgetting it's a Godzilla film. So, Odo Island happened, and then we're character driven for a long time. And then out of nowhere, it goes, XYZ date, Castle Bravo. And then it cuts. You only see Godzilla's eye or part of his face, and it's being boiled and burned away, but he regenerates so quickly that you're actually seeing his mutation in real time. And that really brings it home, oh, shit's about to hit the fan now. And
that was so quick, wasn't it? It was just a glimpse.
It does. But I mean, it's jarring. It's just remember, folks, there's a big bad coming. His life is going swimmingly, but we're about to screw that up. They do throw that in there. And it is a point where you've almost forgotten it's a Godzilla film, because you're kind of left wondering oh, where's God? Oh, yep, there he is. Oh, that doesn't look good. And just it just escalates very quickly. But yeah, like what Dave said there, that's true. There are points where you can forget it's a Godzilla film, and I think that was the first point in the film where they reel it back in.
I think Dave hit the nail on the head, and it's lovely to think that we've got people writing in like Dave who came along to our first and only con, years back now. That's great that there's that continuity of presence. I am conscious of time. Shall we possibly look to wrap up with our final thoughts, gentlemen? But I think we could definitely come back to this film again.
Yeah, I do want to watch it again.
I,
I need to
I,
watch all of them and rank them.
I have found Yamazaki, the director. I found him, so
Okay, drop him a note.
maybe, maybe. Like we'll see if he can spare us an evening. Get him on. Paul, if nothing else, what would you like to recommend this evening?
If nothing else, firstly, I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday and happy new year. Welcome to 2024. I would like to hear perhaps from our listeners, viewers. Could you tell me what your highlights were from 2023? Because thinking back, it was possibly one of the best or most packed kaiju years we've had in quite a long time. I'm thinking like last year we had Shin Godzilla come to UK cinemas, as well as Godzilla Minus One, as well as Camden Shin Kamen Rider. And we had the Kong Netflix show. We had the Gamera Netflix show. We've had Monarch. And there's been so, what was your highlight? Everyone's probably going to say Minus One. I'll be interested to hear anyone who doesn't say Minus One. And I still haven't checked out Gamera. I'm ashamed to say I will do that. But if nothing else, I'll end how I started and say, go read Island 71 or Nemesis, one of the two. Go read something by Jeremy Robinson and check out the episodes where he was on because he was fantastic.
And for myself, a couple of things. I'll do the slightly more jovial one first. I would encourage you, if you've never seen it before, to go out and check out Masaki Kobayashi's Kwaidan, which was filmed in 1964. It's a Toho movie, and it is a yokai movie rather than a kaiju movie. It was described by, I'm having a brain fart. Joe, who was the director of Hellboy?
Wasn't Del Toro, was it?
Thank you, Del Toro. Sorry.
Del Toro.
Del Toro described it as being the most beautiful film that he's ever seen. And when I saw that description in an interview, I thought, I've got to go and see this. And Kwaidan is an absolutely flawless film. And the reason why I kind of recommend tonight was because the acting and the characters are completely compelling. And I think watching Godzilla Minus One, that's the closest that I've kind of felt by comparison. So check out Kobayashi's Kwaidan 1964. You can get it in abundance. There's lots of versions of it. And on a more serious note, when you are listening to this podcast, there was a very serious 7.5 magnitude earthquake on the western coast of Japan recently. It looks like death toll is quite high. So I feel like as listeners, as we consume lots of Japanese culture, it's important to kind of keep up with the news as well at a practical level. So do try and find out what's going on, and maybe you have friends and family out there, so we're thinking of them. Joe, over to you.
Right. So two things. I always recommend a book. So I'm going to recommend, if you can find it, and if you're willing to put in the effort, the official novelization of Godzilla Minus One offers additional insights into the film. And this is kind of like when you read a book and you get what characters are thinking and their motivations and the extra spice, as you might say. It's really nice to have. There are elements which I have seen snippets of, and I am looking to get myself one of the official novelizations. But what the bit that cinched it for me was that with Odo Island, when pre-mutation Godzilla attacks the garrison, he doesn't go after the gentleman in the plane because he's not attacking. He's not a threat. So Godzilla evaluates that character, evaluates that threat, and moves on. So it was a conscious decision by Godzilla not to attack a neutral or benign source. So that was just a thing. So like we have Godzilla, who is a thinking creature or is capable of making those kinds of decisions. And up until that point, he hadn't really been fired upon. He attacked, like a light source, which could have been seen as a threat to his primitive mind. But, like, I thought that interesting. So I'm going to be looking for that book. Second thing, haven't really thrown out like a figure or merch lately. So I'm going to throw out that NECA have released a Creature from the Black Lagoon figure. It is an absolute thing of beauty. If you're in the UK, it retails for around 50 quid. That's where it kind of hovers in Amazon, 47, 50 quid. 50 quid. It comes with a load of extras, including different hands. It is fully posable. There's a black and white and color version, which is cool. What I really love is all of the articulation is hidden. So it is a nice, large, I want to say 15 centimeter high figure, maybe, I don't know. So it's nice and big, but all the articulation's hidden. It has a lovely NECA paint job. If you can find it, go for it, because NECA figures, they only make so many, right? But anyways, that's it for me. We hope that you really enjoyed Godzilla Minus One. Please send us any additional thoughts about it. We'll be happy to hear them. Give us shout outs for what we want to look at. There's so much to go after nowadays that we struggle to keep up. So it's whatever you, the lovely fans, want us to look at, review. And, in the case of Legend of the Dinosaurs and Monster Birds, bite the bullet so we experience it so you don't have to.
Right.
Regardless of the film that is. So please write us and let us know. And as always, keep it kaiju.